My name is Shelly Miller. I'm the SVP of Insights and Partner Success. Today, I'm going to walk you through how we use our own data and our own go-to-market strategy for planning, content, ideal customer profiling, some brand intelligence, and so forth. Before I get started, I'm just going to walk you through a quick note about who we are, and then we will jump into the use cases. So first off, we are the leader in the intent data space. We really created this space. We work with companies of all sizes, but what you can see here is we have a variety of case studies published with some of the largest brands in the world, really powering both sales and marketing. So, the example with Oracle here is that we were able to drive up deal size by just identifying more opportunities to sell into customers. We're able to drive down cost per lead by actually targeting accounts in market through LinkedIn. So with customers of all types, how we source our intent data is through our data cooperative. We are the only data cooperative of its kind where we work with directly first party with business news publishers and B2B publishers of all kinds. Everything from, like you see here, ZDNet, Law.com, MedCity News, to Forbes and Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg. By working directly with these publishers, we're able to track what business professionals are reading across the business internet. Everything from white papers and case studies and webinars and articles, and I'll be able to apply some data science. With our data science, we're able to actually identify when business professionals are reading a normal amount of activity about a certain topic like intent data, and then separate that from when they're actually increasing in research at a statistically significant level. And when they are researching at just a heightened level, we can actually identify what is just sort of normal business activity and what is intent. And so that is how we get our data. And I won't bore you anymore with any data science, and we'll just jump right into our agenda. So again, we reviewed a little bit with our case studies about how Bombora can be leveraged in sales and marketing, right? Account prioritization, account intelligence, or an ABM, advertising, lead generation, et cetera. But you can actually use intent data for go-to-market planning. Really, from everything from just refining an ideal customer profile to understanding what your prospects are understanding about what's going on in the economy and in the news. And then, of course, take that into your own content planning and strategy, resource allocation. Take a sense of how many companies you've been researching your brand. And then, of course, let's get into a little bit of performance. Before I jump into it, let me just tell you a little bit about me. So I mentioned I'm the head of Insights and Partner Success here. Really what my job comes down to is me being that grumpy old man shouting at everybody about leveraging data in really every part of your business operation, right? We all know that data can make us smarter, can make us make better decisions, but it's hard to do. And so I always try to bring a new sense of sort of how we can operationalize it across really every part of our business area, and make it really accessible to everybody. So that's my role here. And I do work across our whole ecosystem between publishers and agencies, platforms, and brands. Okay, now we'll get into ideal customer profile. So there's a lot of ways to make an ideal customer profile. One is of course, like what kinds of companies are in your database, who actually buys your products, right? And then identify the sort of makeup of those accounts. So are they large? Are they small? Are they in manufacturing? Are they in healthcare? You can also sort of apply technographics, like how many of these companies are using different kinds of tools that we can leverage and sell into. But what we can actually do with intent data is not just look at sort of who bought from you before, or who your salespeople talk to, or like who could buy your stuff. What if we actually looked at who's even researching your stuff? Who even wants to buy your products? That's what we have here. This is the number of companies that have researched Bombora or intent data in the last 90 days. So there are 11,464 total companies that have researched our products or us, period, in the last 90 days. So that gives us a nice quick way to say, here's how big that market is, right? The image you see on the right here, this little funnel, this actually breaks down how intense that research is, because basically, just because somebody's signaling intent doesn't mean they're ready to buy today. Unfortunately, we would love them to all buy today, but sometimes it takes a little bit more for them to figure out really how do they want to use it. So we can also break down, of course, this amount of research. You can almost think of it as market readiness based on the intent signal itself. So we can see that there's 11,000 companies researching it, but really only about 34% of them are probably furthest along, ready to buy. All right, how else we can use this data to sort of refine this ideal customer profile is actually think about what they want to buy. So what you can see here is sort of 4 major use cases that we sell into. We sell go-to-market, we sell sales, we sell marketing and measurements. These are all the ways you can leverage intent data. And so if we then start to see how many companies that are researching our products are actually researching these different solutions, then we can better refine to say, hey, as we are sort of defining our own market opportunity and what kinds of customers even want to buy our products, we can figure out what they want to buy our product for, right? And then we can see that, hey, look, there's about 40% more companies researching go-to-market than measurement, So as we are planning our budgeting, right, how much are we going to invest into marketing different products? Here's a data point that actually can tell me that, that goes beyond just, well, that's what the seller said. All right, the last piece that we can apply to the ideal customer profile is let's actually talk about what kinds of companies are doing this research. So we have an ability to sort of look at what kinds of companies are over-indexing for our topics. So if we were just looking at how many companies are researching intent data compared to their, the size of that market, we can actually see that really extra large companies, software companies, media companies, business services, they're the ones that are researching Bombora the most. In fact, if you're a 10,000 plus employee company, you're 3 times more likely to research Bombora than a company less than 500 people. So as again, we're planning to see who should we really reach out to, who's the best, most likely going to be buying your product, and how many of those kinds of companies exist. This intent data can really answer those questions for us. So that is the sort of first way that we leverage intent data in our own go-to-market strategy. What else we do here is we're thinking about, how are companies researching different topics across this whole, the whole business internet. So if you've had the news on at any given point in the last 7 months or so, that, there's a lot of talk about a recession. Maybe it's here, maybe it's coming. We don't know, but the inflation rates have been quite high. They've been, increasing. The Fed has been sort of doing what they can to sort of bring back down inflation. There's all kinds of questions around supply chain, and in the end, really there's just economic uncertainty, right? That's just really been dominating the news. So the nice thing about our intent data is that we can actually see that. We can see how many companies are really researching this, how many of this is really maybe affecting their own business decisions. And so we looked into our intent data, and we could see that in our enterprise customers, because that's who we decided was our ideal customer profile, recession was top of mind. And it really took over, and it's the blue area in this chart. Really took over in the summer, and then again in the winter, really December, January timeframe. So research around the recession over the course of the last 18 months has grown 8%, but really the biggest spike was in Q2 with a 238% jump. So yes, the recession has become top of mind. But as you're a marketer, you're thinking, well, what am I supposed to do with that, right? Here's what you can do with that. Think about how would this sort of macro trend apply to your customer base. And so for us, it means thinking about business growth versus business resiliency. So if you are a company that's worried about the recession, right? And you're our target profile, right? Your enterprise, 1,000 plus employee sizes. If recession is top of mind, you're probably thinking about business resiliency over business growth. You're probably thinking, how do I maintain my customers rather than try to just find new customers, right? Launch new products, expand the business. I really want to just make sure we can get through the economic uncertain or downturn times. And so we can see that in the data as well. So remember, in the summer was when the recession sort of became top of mind, and that was the first time we could actually see that enterprise companies were actually researching business resiliency over business growth. So that took place also again in December, when we also saw that spike in recession. So that's telling us something important about our prospects, right? They're not really thinking about launching new products or acquiring new customers. They're thinking about, retaining their current customers. And so here's how we could leverage it in our own go-to-market. Let's think about how our data, our solutions help solve that. And it gave us a focus literally for campaigns about how we can best service our own customers. Here's how you use intent data for customer retention. And this was a sample LinkedIn campaign that we ran in the winter. All right, so let's take this sort of research across the internet or the business internet one step further. And let's think about how this actually can apply to our content planning. So when we look earlier, we saw how many companies were sort of researching different solutions, different use cases of our data. So now we're going to go beyond how many companies there were, but how many times did they research it? So there's a lot of data on this slide. So I'm going to start with the blue column, research spikes. That's the number of times a company is going to signal intent within that use case. And then on the right, all the way on the right, the spikes per account, that's the number of times they're going to research it. So this helps me see very quickly that literally as even though most companies are actually researching the go-to-market side, the amount of research that they're actually going to do will be more in marketing. And when they're researching marketing, they're going to research it 23 times. They're going to signal intent at least 23 times. So that literally tells me something. If I'm going to be producing content, 30% of my customers are going to be researching marketing. Therefore, I can look at my content calendar and say, hey, is 30% of my content calendar dedicated to marketing? Do I have 23 pieces of content that could sort of try to influence each part of that buying journey? Because I want to make sure that if they are, researching marketing, I want to influence that, right? I want my content, my perspective to be what they research as they are trying to understand how to use intent data within marketing. So that's what else this data can tell us. In addition, In addition, we can see when is this research taking place. So now we're looking at the last year, and we can actually see how much research is actually taking place over the course of the year per use case. So this middle bar is the average, right? So anytime it's above the average, that tells there's a higher volume of companies doing research. And then that sort of dictates for me, if I'm spending money on an ad campaign, right? And if I'm spending, let's say, $10,000, $10,000 to reach 10,000 people, right? I can sort of have an expectation of how many of them I'm going to actually engage with and reach. But if there's 20,000 people researching it, I need to know that, right? Because if in the summer, this is when people will be researching more of these topics, I need to adjust my budget accordingly. Maybe I actually want to invest earlier. Maybe I want to expand my budget whenever there's a higher volume. I just need to know when that's happening, and that's what else I can see by just looking at this research. The other thing that we can do is we can sort of take a look at what will somebody research in which part of the journey. So as we look at enterprise customers, we can actually see that they were spiking on marketing before they spiked on the go-to-market and the measurement. So that also helps me build my cadence, right? If I'm thinking I need to have 23 pieces of content to influence every part of that journey, I sort of also have to start with marketing and then lead into how intent data solves measurement and go-to-market. But it sort of comes after I answered their first question, which is how does intent data work with marketing? Okay, moving on. The other thing that intent data can help us understand is brand and competitive intelligence. So brand we know is very important, right? Talk to any salesperson or just think about yourself. Do you ever answer the phone to someone you don't know? Like you just don't. Same thing goes with your prospects when your BDRs are calling them, right? They're calling to say, hey, I want to talk to you about my product. And if they've never heard of your company, they're not answering the phone. So that's why we know it matters, but it's really difficult to tell your CFO, please, sir, give me more money to invest in brands, right? Because he or she will say, what did I get for that? It's really difficult to measure, but intent data can give us part of that. It can give us something from that sort of goes beyond, things like click rate, because, a lot of brand campaigns, they're just not meant to be measured that way. I don't really need them to just click on a general ad, or it's not even possible to click if I'm buying something out of home or, sponsoring a large event. So what we can do though is just by looking at how many companies are researching our name, our brand versus other competitors, we can at least start to establish where do we stand, right? So within this competitive set, and I anonymize it, of course, for our friends, but we can actually see that we're ranking third, right, in this list amongst this target audience. So we can at least start to establish what is out there. The next thing that we can do is not just to see, okay, where do we rank, which is a nice bit of information, but we can actually start to establish what kinds of companies are researching us more or less. How strong is our brand with the sort of smaller enterprise, 1,000 plus employees to 4,000 employees, or the 10,000 plus size. So we can see that we're actually a little bit stronger with the 1,000 to 5,000 employee size. But we can also see our competitors, where they stand. And therefore, we know if we want to do any kind of conquesting, we can think about where are they stronger, right? If they're stronger with a certain segment, we need to sort of know how to better battle card with them. That's what else intent data can do for us, is we can actually take a look at, for the kinds of companies researching us, and compare that to the kinds of companies researching our competitors, and think about what use cases is the most important for those two lists. Because then we can identify, hey, if you're in market for Bombora, the things that matter to you more is lead scoring and campaign activation. But if you're in market for our competitor, the number one use case for you is events. So we know that, hey, we're a little bit, we lose a little bit there. And we also know that if they're in market for our competitor, here's where we're better than them. So that's really going to help us differentiate ourselves, sort of get out ahead at what our customer needs are, and also just understand, even from a product discovery perspective, like where do we really rank for each feature that we deliver on for our customers. We can also leverage this to actually measure specific tactics. So when we launched a campaign in the winter, and this campaign it's an ABM campaign, so we used a whole bunch of tactics, email and banner and display and a whole BDR campaign as well. So a lot of these touches did not come down to a really simple digital engagement. So what we had to do to measure that instead was look at the accounts that we are targeting, how many of them are researching us versus our competitor, and track that over time. So we could see that over the course of this campaign, all of our touches, even though we couldn't bring them back to attribute them to an exact click-through rate, we could see that the overall research of us versus a competitor did change over time. So it's just a really powerful way for us to see holistically, how do we influence an account list that goes much broader than just one simple, marketing automation or sequence performance. Which is a good segue into our next bit, which is performance. So there's a lot of ways to measure efforts within go-to-market strategy, but I want to talk specifically about how to measure it with intent. So with intent, we can see first off, right, of course, a lot of ways that you measure marketing efforts is you just look at how many people visit my landing page. Great. But with intent data, we can see not just how many people visited my landing page, but how many of those people are signaling intent for us, right? I want to sort of kick out everybody that's just not really in market yet. I want to make sure I also kick out consumers, kick out job seekers, kick out students. Just show me how many people are visiting and engaging with us that fit my target audience and are in market. And so that's the first thing that you can do in terms of establishing measurement and performance with intent data. Is like, let's actually just level set on how much of this traffic is in market, and then take one more benchmark to see how many companies are researching us, right? That we saw in the very, very beginning, about 11,000 companies researching us. How many of them are researching us that visit our website versus how many of them are researching us but don't visit our website? How many do we not get yet? And that was the same is true for researching Bombora versus intent marketing or intent data. So to explain these graphs here, the orange bar is the enterprise company. So again, our target audience, our target prospects, that's the number of companies that have intent for Bombora, visiting Bombora. The blue line is how many of them have intent for Bombora that didn't visit Bombora. And then the yellow line is the market penetration number. How many of these are we actually capturing? So this really helps us really level set to say, listen, we're actually capturing 52% of all the companies with intent for Bombora. And that number, whether or not it's good or bad, it's our first real benchmark to establish how well are all of our holistic efforts doing. And that lets us sort of figure out, how do we grow from here, right? How do we make that 52%, 55%, 60%, and so forth? It also tells us exactly, hey, look, there's 1,800 companies that are researching us that have not yet gotten to our pages. Why not? Let's go call them. The final thing that we can do with intent is it lets us really measure something different, right? When we're trying to reach an audience, potentially prospects that are in market, right? We can of course go and look at, okay, we want to just make sure that there's just more hits to our website, more hits to our landing page, more email opens, right? Those are some of the normal metrics that you can see. But what if we just looked at, not just are we getting bigger, right? Getting more engagement, are we getting more of the right engagement? And are we getting more engagement that is further in market? So that's what we're trying to achieve here. So just to explain this graph, the yellow line is the reach over time through that course of the campaign of enterprise companies visiting our site. So during this flight, congratulations, we grew this traffic by 15%. Fantastic, right? Our tactics work. The blue line, the bottom column, is the number of enterprise companies that are signaling intent for Bombora. So this number also grew, but that ratio, that's the one that really grew. So that ratio, that area column behind, grew by 118%. So we can actually measure to see not just that we grew bigger, but we grew the in-market audience by 118%. So it's not just that we got bigger, we got more efficient, and we actually brought these enterprise customers not just to our website, but further down the journey. So that's, to us, is really the best way to sort of understand what's the impact of our work. That goes a lot bigger than just, hey, more traffic, right? But more traffic that doesn't convert anything, more traffic that's not in market, it's just hard to really evaluate those tactics without intent data. So that's it for me. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.